Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. So the last beer that I had from these guys was very nice actually, I do remember it kind of, but it's been about 4 years since I've had something from this brewery, and the main reason for that is just the fact that there are so many breweries in Sweden these days. As I've told you in previous reviews, there are somewhere in the region of like 800 little microbreweries across the country, which is very impressive when you consider there's about, what, 10.5 million people in Sweden these days. So yeah, cool to return to these guys after quite some time. So for this review then, we are going to head over to Gotland, which is the larger of the two islands off the southeastern coast of Sweden. We're going to go to Visby, which is the capital, I guess you could say, and we're having a look at my second beer from Barlingbo Bryggeri. So this particular beer is the Svartkrake, or the Black Crow, as that would be in English. It comes in at 7% ABV, and they're describing this one as a winter warmer, vintervärmare. But I've seen it listed on Untappd and things like that as a Scotch ale, and that was the main reason that I got it, because you don't come across all that many Scotch ales here in Sweden. But yeah, I have had this beer sitting for a little while. I'm pretty sure I bought this back in like November or December of last year, but being a more kind of malty beer, I'm pretty sure it will be alright. I think it just kind of got pushed to the back of the fridge with all these beer mails and things that I had coming in. So yeah, nice to finally get around to having a look at this one. Always cool to review some Gotland beers for you here on the channel. So hopefully this one is as good as the last one we had from them. So the last beer that I had from this brewery was called Keisaren. It was a Belgian sort of dark strong ale. I can't remember whether we would describe it more as a double or a quadruple. But yeah, these guys, from by all accounts, seem to know what they're doing when it comes to the more kind of malty and brown sugary side of things. So hopefully this one carries on in the same vein as that last beer, because I do remember thinking that it was pretty damn solid actually. And I guess for the next review that we do from these guys, we'll need to try something from the lighter end of the spectrum as well. But yeah, let's see how we go with this one then. The Svartkrake, 7% winter warmer from Barlingbo Bryggeri in Visby over on Gotland. Let's see how we do with this one then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Barlingbo Bryggeri. Like I said, this is my second one, and I'm sure we'll add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Barlingbo Bryggeri. So Barlingbo Bryggeri was founded back in 2013 by Jonny Larg and Niklas Gustafsson. So Niklas is the brewer, and he and Jonny had been experimenting with home brewing for quite a while, and they later decided that they wanted to turn this into their profession because they just enjoyed working together so much and brewing beer a lot. But the brewery were originally based at Stafagård, which is about 10 kilometres outside of Visby, and their first beers appeared in Systembolaget back in May of 2014. Over the coming years, they continued to develop recipes and brew more beers and build up their kind of sales network. But in February of 2017, the brewery announced plans to move to Visby at a location next to Skatteverket and Radio Gotland. But they've teamed up with a restaurateur called Reinhard Keinprecht, and they have a restaurant on site in the new brewery which has 50 seats indoors and a 50-seater outdoor terrace as well, but I believe that's kind of gone on the back pedal in recent times because of the pandemic. But just before the COVID-19 pandemic, in fact, they invested a lot in the brewery and they won a regular slot at Systembolaget, and these days they have a 2,800 litre brew kit and they're gradually expanding their fermentation capacity. They got a big order of about 200,000 litres from Systembolaget from what I read, and so they had to kind of scramble quite quickly to get equipment together to provide the beer for this. In fact, their fermentation capacity wasn't quite enough to meet this, of course, at the time. But they seem to have pulled it together, and they're kind of soldiering their way through it, I guess we could say. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 135 different kinds of beer, and there seems to be a whole variety of different styles available from them. But yeah, that's all I could really tell you about the brewery for the moment. That was all I was able to find on my research. But if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, looks pretty cool. And I have to say, when I looked at the pictures of their the building that they're operating out of, it's this lovely old kind of brick building. It looks like some of the old engine sheds, some of the old steam engine sheds that we have back home in Scotland. It would be quite cool to go there and have a look at their sort of brewery pub and things when that's open. That would be a nice little out and about video, I think. So yeah, hopefully we can get over to Gotland at some point and check it out. I've been talking about that with my dad, of course. But yeah, let's go for it with this beer then and see how we go. If you want to learn more, as I say, check out those links in the description below. But I think it's about time that we had a look at the beer itself. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, there is the Svartkrake, Black Crow, Vintervärmare, Winter Warmer, Barlingbo Bryggeri on the top there. And they've also got a beetle on the bottle cap. I'm not sure exactly what the deal is with the insects on these different things, but yeah, you can see it's 7% ABV. It was actually listed on Untappd as being 7.5%, so maybe there has been a few recipe adjustments or something like this. But yeah, it tells you on the side here a little bit about Svartkrake. So it says Svartkrake are in Swedish folklore, I guess you could say, are a normal sign of Gotland. They are seen often in big flocks, and they dominate autumn and winter views. But a self-assured character gives life to a self-assured character that gives life to that's not Kargas. That's like sort of bleakness and kind of like emptiness, like like when winter, you get the snow, it's just white. It basically means like the bleakness and the coolness of the winter half year. But our own Black Crow is a warming and sweet ale with tones of oak barrels, oak vats. Yes, so yeah, Swedish translation there. It's always weird when you get words like that and you're just like, what is that word? How do you say that in English? But yeah, I think I did pretty well with the the translations there. So yeah, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, nicely presented. This one, as we said, a 7% winter warmer. Some people are listing it as a Scotch ale. We'll have a look at it and see how we go. But I think this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskalig either for November of 2020 or December. Yeah, November or December of 2020. This one's been in my fridge for a few months and I've been wanting to get around to it. But yeah, 330ml bottle. I couldn't tell you what I paid for it now. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this has in store for us. I do wonder what kind of beetle that is as well. Looks like a sort of African beetle, African art. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious about this beer. As you'll know if you've watched the channel before as well, I'm a huge sucker for these kind of brown sugary, malty leaning beers. Probably my favourite beer styles would be, Doppelbox, Belgian quadruples, the Scotch ale, of course. I'm a bit biased towards that being Scottish. I love a good Scotch ale. And I do enjoy a big kind of oily barley wine as well. Those are probably my favourite beer styles outside of the Rauch beer. Rauch beer is a big nostalgic one for me. But yeah, this certainly looks very, very nice. So yeah, before the head disappears on this beer, because it looks as if it's going to go fast, you can see that it poured with somewhere between a quarter and a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say sort of ivory, kind of cream coloured head there. That has faded away though, just to be a very, very thin, foamy and wispy layer on the top of the beer, but you've got a nice kind of ring just around the edge of the glass there, which looks very, very good. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But yeah, it looks pretty nice. So in terms of the colour of this one, because there's not too much more to say about the head, this one comes across with a nice, if we shine the light through it, it's actually like a sort of light mahogany. I think it looks a little bit darker on the camera to you guys than it is to the naked eye, but it's very much like a light mahogany. One of my Spanish guitars that I have has a mahogany neck, and it's pretty much exactly the same colour as that varnished mahogany neck. So yeah, very light, nice mahogany colour to this one. You could probably also describe it as kind of coppery as well, I guess. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of your colour of your beer. But then two, the length of the wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. And then any adjuncts that you put in and any barrel aging that you do will also play a role there as well. When we're talking about beers like this, you know, sort of more malty, brown sugar leaning beers, you know, adjuncts can affect the colour to a degree, depending on how light the original beer is, and barrel aging, I think, could potentially affect it a little bit, but not too much. You know, barrel aging and fruity adjuncts and stuff like this tend to affect more sour beers rather than anything, but those are the four things you need to think about when it comes to the colour of your beer. But in terms of comparing this to a Scotch ale, if it is indeed going to be a Scotch ale, it looks quite similar to, you know, a sort of 60, 70 shilling, which is kind of about a mid-strength Scotch ale, of course. But we'll have a taste of it first and decide whether it's a Scotch ale or not. And if so, I will tell you a wee bit more about the Scotch ales, because it could just be a winter ale, basically. I'm not 100% sure. But it certainly looks the part, a lovely kind of rich copper colour. You can see it's actually quite clear, to be honest with you. And it's got a wee bit of a kind of... it's got a little bit of a sort of natural haze to it. But in terms of what you'd expect from a winter warmer, this is pretty much what you would expect. So yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business actually. I think maybe the natural haze I'm picking up, it could just be the sweat on the glass, the condensation. But yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we go. Not much else we can say about the appearance of this beer. Now, hard to say from the aroma. It's got a little bit, it certainly has a wee bit of Scotch ale character, but they don't mention themselves that it's Scotch ale. That's the thing. They say it's a winter warmer, but they don't say themselves that it's a Scotch ale. That's why I'm hesitating with this. But it was listed on Systembolaget as well as a Scotch ale, from what I remember. But yeah, it is quite nice, this. I mean, straight away with this one, you can smell a little bit of a kind of light, bready backbone to it. It's got a wee bit of a smooth hoppy character, a little bit of fruitiness, and it just has a wee bit of a woody kind of spicy character to it. So this, to be honest, is everything you would want from a winter warmer. At 7% though, it's not the heaviest of winter warmers that you're going to come across, but that doesn't matter too much. That doesn't really matter. You do always expect a big, more kind of malty, brown sugary, chewy sort of beer around Christmas time. But yeah, let's break down the aroma for you and try and figure out exactly what kind of style this beer is. But it certainly has a wee bit of Scotch ale, you know, sort of English old ale type character to it, just from a brief look at the aroma. But let's break that down further. So yeah, backbone of this beer, you do get a nice kind of woody layer to it, as we said. There's a bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character to this one. A lot of bread crust, I would say, as well. Definitely some sweet caramel in there, which I can certainly enjoy. Yeah, a good little bit of sweet caramel for sure. Yeah, but the brown sugars as well, you get, it's kind of interesting with the brown sugars here because there's a few different things going on. You get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing out of it. You certainly get a little bit of that. You do get a bit of a straight up caramel in there, but there's also some toasty brown sugars and a wee bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So that's kind of interesting, and all of that is sitting on top of this kind of wholemealy brown bready layer and then the woody backbone, and the woodiness does have a wee touch of spice actually. So yeah, the that whole side of this beer is quite interesting. As I say, really kind of woody smooth and slightly spicy in the backbone, and yeah, I like how it's how it goes together from that perspective for sure. I really do like it, but yeah, I think this is interesting. It does have a few Scotch ale characteristics to it, but it kind of smells a little bit clean compared to, it's got that typical sort of Nordic cleanliness to it that I always talk about, that you get with Swedish Norwegian, Danish, Finnish beers. You always get a bit of Nordic cleanliness out of these things. But yeah, the aroma of this one is quite interesting. It does have a bit of the greeniness that you would expect of a Scotch ale, though usually the English old ales are a little bit more, are just a little bit kind of thicker and more chewy than this. Like I say, this strikes me as being similar to a sort of mid-strength Scotch ale, 60-70 shilling, if we are indeed talking about this particular scale. But I think that covers everything we really need to say about the kind of malty and the yeasty side of things. You can feel a little bit more of a kind of drier bready character, which I suspect is the malty part, the yeasty part of the beer, sorry. But on the hoppy side of things, it's kind of interesting. So I do suspect there might be some English hops in this, because you've got a bit of an earthiness to this one, and again it strikes me as being like, you know, Kent Goldings or Bramling's Cross or something like that. The fruitiness reminds me of Bramling's Cross actually, because it's got a wee bit of that more kind of dried, very slightly phenolic type quality to it. But you certainly get a wee bit of earthiness in there. There's a wee bit of a herbal character, some nice bright floral notes in there as well. But as I say, the floral notes aren't too pungent, and that's usually one of the signatures of English hops. Later grassy note in there as well, and just a wee touch of a kind of citrusy kind of thing. So yeah, I do like how this goes together from that perspective too. So it gets a big thumbs up from me this beer gets a big thumbs up from me in terms of its hoppy character. I think this is quite authentic for a winter warmer again. But on the fruity side of things, in the front part of your palate, you do get a little bit of that sort of fruit cakey, fruit bready sort of thing to this one, but there's a lot of kind of figgy elements for me. There's a lot of figgy elements for me. There's a wee bit of a kind of black curranty sort of thing, and you know, you've got all of that. You've got all of that side of the beer as well. So a little bit of a raisiny sharpness. Yeah, a little bit of a raisiny sharpness, wee bit of a kind of figgy note to it as well, and you know, a wee touch of a kind of black curranty element also. So it's quite an interesting beer, this one. I'm curious to see how all of this is going to translate into the actual flavour. So yeah, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma, but I think it's about time that we'd have a taste of this one. I also just noticed something on the bottle down here as well. They've got a little Gotland symbol, which I think is quite cool. I don't know if, I've never checked if Gotland has its own flag, but like I say, I do want to get over there and have a look. But yeah, let's have a taste of this beer then and see how we get on. This one is the Svartkrake, a 7% winter warmer. I suspect maybe a Scotch ale or something like this from Barlingbo Bryggeri in Visby over in Gotland. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Now it certainly does, I'm going to say straight away, it does have a few Scotch ale type characteristics to it. It's a little bit sweeter than some of the Scotch ales that you'll find at home. It's got a little bit more kind of brown sugary sweetness to it rather than toastiness. But it could, you know, this could fit into a Scotch ale category if you like. I think it could. I can certainly see why it's been put into that that list, if you like, through Untappd. So to tell you a little bit about the Scotch ales then, generally speaking, Scottish brewed Scotch ales, they've usually got a big kind of brown bready base to them, a good sort of oily and slightly treacly but still toasty brown sugary element to them. You get quite a bit of a nice big red fruity note to them as well. They've got a little bit of a kind of dried fruity character to them. You do get the more American style Scotch ales as well, which are kind of rounder and sweeter, and the fruits are a bit more kind of oily and things like that. And I like both of them, to be honest. I do like the American take on the Scotch ale. It really suits the Scottish sweet tooth well. But this one really does come across as more, if it is a Scotch ale, it really comes across as a little bit more like an old school Scottish brewed Scotch ale. So the way that the Scotch ales used to be rated or defined was that there was a tax, and our currency before it was decimalised was the shilling. So you had pounds and shillings. So and this was to do with the tax. So you had the shilling scale. So you started at 30 shilling, you would go 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and you also get up some 160 shilling beers. these days. But basically, as you went up the scale, this was a reference to the tax. So the more malt you had in the beer, the more boozy it was, thus you paid the more tax. It was that straightforward. So yeah, this one kind of strikes me. Most of the American Scotch ales that you get these days are like 90 shillings or 160 shillings. If you want to try a good Scottish brewed American style Scotch ale, Old Parochial from Tempest Brewery and Galashiels. If you want a more traditional type Scotch ale, then I would say Track Your House, one of their beers. You know, I forget the name of it, but try, you know, they've got a 160 shilling and they've got another one that's called Lady something, which is also very good. But Track Your House, they make their way to Sweden quite often, so those are two. If you want an idea of what Scottish brewed Scotch ales are like, yeah, Tempest Old Parochial and Track Your House. But you know, you will get other ones. This beer actually reminds me of another beer in Scotland called Old Jock, and this is by Broughton Brewery, who were the first craft brewery in Sweden, and it's one of their kind of flagship beers, if you like. So this one is a little bit more along that line, like a lower alcohol, kind of mid-strength Scotch ale. So yeah, this would probably be akin to like a 50-60 shilling type beer, this one, although it is a wee bit stronger in terms of alcohol. So it's got the alcohol strength of maybe an 80 shilling or so, but it's not that the flavour isn't quite. It's a bit more bready than a Scottish, 70-80 shilling might be. So just bear that in mind. But anyway, that's your Scotch ales. That's a kind of brief history of the Scotch ales and how they work. But as I say, it's got a lovely smoothness to it, this one. And I love trying Scotch ales from different parts of the world. I've only had 3 or 4 from Sweden, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, the how do we say, the backbone of this beer is really nice. This is one that kind of translates from the aroma into the flavour quite well. So the backbone of your beer, you can feel a lovely kind of sort of woody backbone to this one. It's got a little bit of dryness to it, but that blankets the middle third and the back third of your palate. On top of that, you get a smoother sort of brown bready character out of this one, which I a kind of smoother brown bready character, which I do enjoy, and it is kind of wholemealy, but at the same time you get a little bit of a kind of toasty, bread crusty note to it. So if we focus on that middle third of your palate, you can feel that sort of thick, wholemealy, brown bready character. At either end of that middle third of your palate, it's got a little bit of a thicker kind of bread crusty note to it, and a wee bit of a kind of toasty dryness in there too, which I do like. But sitting on top of that bready layer, which incidentally starts to become a little bit almost wetter the further that you go into the aftertaste, you'll get some of the brown sugars. But sitting, in between those, you almost get a little bit of, it's like when you have a fresh roll and there's still a bit of flour on it, it's got a little bit of that almost powdery sort of thing sitting on top of the bread, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, on top of that, as I say though, you get the brown sugars. The kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy thing I was picking up in the aroma, that doesn't transpire into the flavour, definitely not. But the brown sugars, if you go to the dead centre of that middle third of your palate, there's certainly a kind of concentrated sweet sort of sweet caramel in there. Then as you move further out from that, the brown sugars get gradually more kind of toasty, and then they progress as you move even further out from that, they start to get a little bit more kind of McVitie's digestive and biscuity like. So that is worth paying attention to in this beer, that's for sure. But yeah, the more that you drink of this one, I would say, the more that the middle of your palate kind of sweetens up in a sense. But it certainly has, when they say it's got a hint of kind of oaky wood to it, I would agree with them there. It is quite a woody beer, this one, and I think it does, in fairness, suit the Scotch ale character quite well. So I would be curious to hear what they themselves say about this beer. Is it a Scotch ale, or is it just intended as a winter ale? Because the thing that makes this one a bit different from the Scotch ale is just the sort of feel of the bread, because the bread is a little bit kind of thicker and almost gloopy's not the right word, but a little bit chalky's not a good word either, but the bread just feels like really kind of squashed together in a sense, whereas the Scottish ones would just be a little bit, it has got the toastiness there. It's almost like that kind of mouthfeel that you can sometimes get from organic malt. So it's just the way the bready character, the sort of vibe of the bready character, this is a bit different from a Scottish brewed Scotch ale, but the sort of flavour profile of this beer, generally speaking, is quite similar to like a 60 shilling Scotch ale. Absolutely, I would agree with that. So I can see why this one's been listed as such on Untappd, absolutely. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate in this one instantly, other than to say that maybe you get a little touch of nutty character towards the front of that middle third of your palate. But yeah, let's move on to the back third of your palate then. So there you can get, underneath that again, you get a little bit of the woodiness there. You can feel a bit of a stronger bread crusty note just sitting on top of that, and you do get a wee bit of grainy bitiness towards the very back of the palate, smoother brown bread on top of that, and then above all of that you can certainly feel a nice kind of more airy brown bready layer to this one, and that's the yeast, of course, coming out of the beer. So when you start at the back of the palate on this one, you can feel the flavour is quite tall, but then it just condenses down as we often get. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it's a wee bit more squashed together, and the flavours feel just a little bit more kind of concentrated actually. So I like how that goes together, absolutely. So yeah, I think that goes together. I think that goes together really nicely on the malty side of things. So yeah, interesting stuff. But let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer. So back corners of the palate, there's certainly a wee bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit more of a kind of herbal quality to it. Then as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic type quality there. Then around the front curve of the tongue, it's certainly a bit lighter and more grassy in a sense. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer, so that it gets a thumbs up in that regard from me. I think the green component of this one is quite nice, but I do suspect English hops in this, just because of the way the earthiness and the herbal character is. It does remind me a little bit of, like, you know, East Kent Goldings, or potentially you know, Bramling's Cross. And I think I say Bramling's Cross because of the red fruity notes that it has. And on that note, we should move on to the fruity part of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a wee bit of a kind of bready quality to this one there. You get a bit of a kind of more grainy bread crust. The base of that kind of front third of your palate is a bit more smooth and kind of bready, again, as we say. But yeah, it works. It does work very, very nicely. But yeah, on top of that, you do get, yeah, there is a wee touch of cakey note to that, I would say, like a fruit roll kind of cakey type thing. But anyway, on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer on this one. And again, I do like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. So towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a wee touch of raisiny sharpness, not a lot, but you can feel there's a sort of almost pruny type note to this one. I wouldn't describe it as being more oily and plummy, definitely more pruny, but very quickly that becomes a lighter sort of figgy quality, and then as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it becomes a little bit more black curranty. Then on top of that, there's just a wee touch of an oily blackberry that lingers there into the aftertaste. So yeah, this is quite an interesting beer from that perspective, definitely. But yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me, and that, as I say, it really reminds me of a sort of 60 shilling beer, this one. I don't know how accessible it is to drinkers in Sweden, but if you ever come across a beer from Broughton Brewery in Scotland called Old Jock, this beer isn't a million miles away from that. It's got the same sort of flavour profile. As I say, the thing that really sets this one apart for me from, you know, regular Scotch ales in Scotland would be the kind of breadiness of it, if you like. But yeah, I like how that goes together in this beer for sure. So a big thumbs up to Barlingbo Bryggeri for this one. I just would be curious to know, is this supposed to be a Scotch ale? Because I think it suits the 60 shilling profile quite well. But let's round off with the mouthfeel then. I would describe this beer as being sort of, you know, straight in the middle of the spectrum, mid-bodied, smooth carbonation, nice little bit of wetness to it. It's got a wee bit of an oily slickness. Again, this is something that you would expect of a Scotch ale. If we are comparing it to the Scotch ales though, I would say that it comes across as very, very clean. In Scotland, we are very proud of our tap water. We're convinced that we have the best tap water in the world, but you know, obviously other countries will have very good tap water as well. So yeah, you can feel that typical Nordic cleanliness to this beer that I always talk about. The malt base in this one, as we say, is quite smooth. There's a degree of sweetness to it. There's a wee touch of a kind of woody spice that lingers with this beer as well. So yeah, it's got an interesting malty backbone to it. Some nice hoppy character. If we're talking IBU wise, I think this is 25, 30ish IBUs. But I think some of the kind of there's a sort of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a little bit of a a kind of crossover, I guess we could say, between the hoppy character and the sort of woody backbone to this one. You get a bit of spice and a bit of hop kind of going together to give you a wee bit of bitterness and spiciness. So it's difficult to kind of distinguish or discriminate between the two, to be honest with you. But a lovely little bit of a juicy, fruity character to it as well. And I do like how it goes about its business. So yeah, interesting beer. I think that's fair to say, this one. And I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. The fruity side of this beer's got a nice bit of dried fruity character to it. I do suspect a little bit of Bramling's Cross in this one. The other one that it could be potentially would be Northern Brewer from Germany, which is used in Doppelbock and things like that. And I wouldn't discount that, but I've got a feeling that it's English hops that are in this one just because of the sort of earthiness and things, unless it's some sort of Swedish variety I've not come across before. But yeah, interesting beer for sure, and I think Barlingbo have done another one. They're showing me here again that they're good when it comes to these brown sugary malty kind of things. But yeah, let's leave it there. This one was the Svartkrake, the Black Crow 7% winter warmer from Barlingbo Bryggeri in Visby over on Gotland. Interesting beer, and I will need to try something else from these guys at some point soon. But thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Barlingbo Bryggeri, and we will return to these guys as soon as we can. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review. Make sure you check this one out.